Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakothi Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Asmadgurubhyo Namaha. Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishwaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shri Medha Dakshinamurti Swamine Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Bhadram Karne Vishranuyama Devaha. Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha. Sthirairangaye Stuštavagum Sastanubihi. Yashema Devahitam Yadayuhu. Swasti na Indro Vriddhasravaha. Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha. Swasti nastarksho arishthanemihi. Swasti no Brihaspatirdhadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So Namaste once again everyone.
Namaste Guruji.
Namaste Guruji.
Namaste. So we have first mantra we will chant. Tadetat Satyam.
Tadetat Satyam
Satyam
Yatha
Yatha
Sudiptat
Sudiptat
Pavakat
Pavakat
Vispulingaha
Vispulingaha
Sahasrashaha
Sahasrashaha
Prabhavante
Prabhavante
Sarupaha
Swarupaha
Tatha
Tata
Aksharad Vividaha
Aksharavividaha
Somya Bhavaha
Somyabhavaha
Prajayante
Prajayante
Tatra
Tatra
Chaivapiyanti.
Chaivapiyanti.
And we will also read the Bhashyam beginning. Yad apara vidya vishayam
Yad aparavidya vishayam
karma phala lakshanam
karma phala
Lakshanam
tatyam
satyam
tad apekshikam
Tad apekshikam
idam tu
idanto
paravidya vishayam
Paravidya vishayam
paramartha
Paramartha
sallakshanatvat
Sallakshanatvat
tadetat satyam
Tadetat satyam
Tadetat satyam
yatha bhutam
Yatha bhutam
Bhutam
vidya vishayam.
Vidya
Vidyavishayam.
vishayam.
Very good. So the chanting has improved a lot. Good. So we have entered the first mantra of the second Mundaka. And as what Bhashyakara indicated in his introduction Bhashyam, the rest of the Upanishad is going to discuss Paravidya. the topic of Aparavidya is over with the first Mundaka. And after briefly discussing the gist of the mantra and the word meanings of the mantra, we have entered the Bhashyam, where Bhashyakara is clarifying right at the beginning a possible doubt that may arise. And that is, in the Aparavidya section, the Upanishad started with Tad Etat Satyam. And now in the Paravidya section also, the Upanishad is starting with Tad Etat Satyam. Does that mean that there are two Satyams? And if so, the non-dual nature of Brahman will be negated. Advaitam will stand negated. But it is a genuine doubt which may arise in the mind of a student. And Bhashyakara clarified that the reality which was talked about in the Aparavidya section by saying Tadetat Satyam is Apekshikam, relative reality. Because that referred to karma and karma phalam, which are anityam. So from a Vyavaharika standpoint, the fact that all karmas will result in an appropriate karma phala is the truth, is the reality. And that was highlighted by the Upanishad by saying Tadetat Satyam in the Aparavidya section. Whereas the Upanishad says Tadetat Satyam in the Paravidya section, it is referring to the absolute truth, the Paramarthika Satyam, which is unnegatable in all three periods of time. Thus, he draws a distinction between Vyavaharika Satyam and Paramarthika Satyam to clarify what is a seeming contradiction. And therefore, he pointed out that the subject matter of Paravidya, which is the subject matter of higher knowledge, is Paramartha Satlakshanam. And because of that, it is Atyantika Satyam and not Apekshikam. Up to this, we discussed in the last class. And that is further explained with the help of the mantra shabdas. He says, Tadetat Satyam Yata Bhutam Vidya Vishayam. So, Tad means that which was talked about earlier. Etat means this. And this means which is the Paravidya Vishayam, which is going to be elaborated. This Tadetat Satyam is Yata Bhutam. Yata Bhutam is another word for Paramarthika. Yata Bhutam means what? Yatatva Bhutam Praptam. It is called Yata Bhutam. Yathartha means as it is, absoluteness. So that which has got absoluteness, that is this Satyam, and it is absolute. Why? Because it is Vidya Vishayam. It is Vidya Vishayam means subject matter of knowledge. Now, interestingly, if you notice, Bhashyakara is not adding and saying Paravidya Vishayam. He just says Vidya Vishayam. And what does that indicate? See, Bhashyakara will, create such small mischief. So he now seems to have changed his mind. Previously, he said that there are two subject matters of knowledge, Paravidya and Aparavidya. Spiritual knowledge is Paravidya and material knowledge is Aparavidya. And that is the convention also. Many people, many acharyas follow this convention. Now Bhashyakara seems to say that all that was said earlier to make student understand in the initial stages. So here, by omitting the word para and just saying Vidya Vishayam, he is implying that spiritual knowledge alone is knowledge. Aparavidya or material knowledge is not knowledge at all. They are all, what you call euphemistic expressions, just to be polite to the Karmakanda people. Just like we use, Vyavaharika Satyam. To be polite, saying, okay, you say that is Satyam, what you are experiencing in the world is Satyam, okay, we agree. Transactional Satyam. That is not absolute truth. So people will be satisfied. Oh, it's okay. We have scored the point against Vedantins. They will be very happy. Some brownie points they will gain. But this entire Karma Kanda, this materialistic knowledge, is avidya only. And therefore, instead of using Paravidya Vishayam, he says, Aksharam alone is Vidya Vishayam. Then what about others? He doesn't keep quiet. He says, Avidya Vishayatvacha Anrutam Itarat. Anrutam Itarat. All others are avidya vishayam, the subject matter of ignorance. So material knowledge comes under ignorance. If you have got all the knowledge of physics, chemistry, mathematics, geography, it is not knowledge at all. And therefore, anrutam itarat. Itarat means anything else. And in that we can include everything, 14 lokas, karmas, karma bhalas, all other disciplines of knowledge other than Paravidya, we can include everything. All of them are Anritam. Anritam is another word for Mithya. So Itarat is equal to Aparavidya Vishayam, which is Mithya. But hearing this, people would be disturbed. Some people will say, see, I spent 12 to 15 years in the Patashala. Whole life I have spent in learning the Karma Kanda and other material sciences and making a living out of that. In fact, I was very proud of my knowledge. Now suddenly this Bhashyakara is saying that all that is ignorance and mithya, unreal, etc. And therefore there can be wild reactions to the extent that people may reject Vedanta. And therefore only, first he very nicely said, Apekshika Satyam. So it's not unreal. I'm not saying it is unreal. It is relatively real, empirically real. It is Vyavaharika Satyam. So this is, a nice way of consoling people. Like, earlier there were two types of definition of countries. Developed countries and underdeveloped countries. But since the word underdeveloped was not a pleasant expression and many people objected, what do you mean underdeveloped? They replaced it with the word developing countries. But developing country means underdeveloped country only. But then better way of saying, like for example, earlier we used to say someone is a lame person or
Disabled.
Is a disabled person.
Now it is
But now
different.
there's a physically challenged person. Okay.
Or differently abled.
Or differently abled. So it's all better expressions we use. the ultimate meaning remains the same only. There is no change in the meaning, but a better way of saying things. So that is why he first said apekshika satyam. And now in this expression vidya vishayam, there is a grammatical issue involved. Of course, it's a very highly technical issue, and therefore I will not go into the details of it. It is about the use of the word vishayam, which is a neutral gender form. But the noun vishaya is masculine. Therefore, there is a grammatical inconsistency which Bhashyam does not deal with. Bhashyakara doesn't highlight this point. But there are sub-commentators. It will not be acceptable to them. They are all also very great Sanskrit scholars, and they will pick up every mistake which is there in the Bhashya. Not to sort of criticize the Bhashyam, but to find a proper interpretation, so that we understand it properly, and Bhashyakara is also, the Bhashyam is also not put into question. Bhashyam is not put in, is not shown in poor light. And therefore, Anandagiri, who is one of the very famous, popular Tikakara, a very widely known and popular commentator, and who has also written Bhashyam on all the Upanishads. And he has written sub-commentary, Tika, on all the Bhashyams of all the 10 Upanishads, and also Brahma Sutra. Many times we feel only Adi Shankaracharya has done so much. There are so many Acharyas who have done so much in one lifetime. So in his sub-commentary on the commentary of the Bhashyakara, he explains that the use of the word Vishayam by Bhashyakara in such a way that the neuter gender is justified. And at the same time, the subject matter is not affected. And as I said, unless one has got a very good knowledge of Sanskrit grammar and the nuances, these discussions will not make any sense. And therefore, I am skipping it. But Acharyas in Gurukulam and all, they deal with it because the students there have to know every subtle aspects of the Bhashyam, including Sanskrit grammar involved. And in fact, many very, very, students will be there who will be already, who have very good knowledge of Sanskrit. And they will immediately raise their hands and say, no, how can Bhashyakara use this word Vishaya? Such students will be there when you are teaching in a Gurukulam. Different background students are there, and many of them would have been studying Sanskrit for years. But then, knowing our batch, I thought that, I need not go into the too much details, because it will then go on and on. And then we will actually, what they say, miss the trees, or miss the wood for the trees, or something like that. Some saying is there, Yeah, miss the wood for the trees or something. Yeah. So until now, Bhashyakara has commented upon Tad Etat Satya. Now, for the sake of explaining the Srishti, creation, the Upanishad gives an example of Agni and Vispulinga. And Bhashyakara explains the significance of the example, because examples make the teaching simpler, so that the students will grasp what is being said. Because even otherwise, the message of the Upanishad is itself very tough to understand. Aksharam, a very subtle being, the cause of even Akasha, the space, is not easy to understand. In fact, we are not able to understand Akasha itself. Even now, scientists are not sure what space is. They accept that space is a material, but what type of material? So when space itself is extremely subtle, it is extremely difficult to understand. The Akasha Karanam, which is Aksharam, you can imagine how much difficulty it will be to understand. And whenever there is a difficulty in communication, the method used by the scripture is to use an example. Sukha bodhartam drishtantaha. And therefore, Upanishad also uses a drishtanta. As Aksharam is Atyanta Paroksha. It is not available for any sense organ. It is beyond all the range of sense organs. It is not a subject matter of Pratyaksha Pramanam. And because of that, it is not available for Anumanam, inference also. And therefore, examples become very, very important in the teaching. And of course, as I've said earlier also, we have to always bear in mind that no example is perfect. You can poke holes in all examples. And therefore, an example should be understood only for the aspect which it wants to highlight. These are all points that we have to remember while studying the Upanishads. So Bhashyakara introduces the next sentence, explaining the words of the mantra Yada Sudiptat Pavakat Vispulingaha Sahasrashaha Prabhavante Sarupaha, which is there in the Moolam. He says, Atyanta Parokshatvat Katham Nama Pratyakshavat Satyamaksharam Pratipadyeran iti Drishtantamaha. I think we have read this in the last class, isn't it? What happened?
Yes, yes.
Yes or no? I think we will read it once again. Atyanta Parokshatvat
Proktatvat
Katham Nama
Katham
Nama
nama
Pratyakshavat
Pratyakshavat
Satyamaksharam
Satyamaksharam
Pratipadyeran iti
Pratipatyeran
Pratipatyeran iti
Drishtantamaha
Drishtantamaha
Yatha Sudiptat
Yata Sudiptat
Sushtudiptat
Sushtudiptat
Iddat
Idhat
Pavakat
Pavakat
Agnehe
Agnehe
Vispulingaha
Vispulingaha
Agnyavayavaha
Agnyavayavaha
Sahasrashaha
Sahasrashaha
Anekashaha
Anekashaha
Prabhavante
Prabhavante
Nirgachanti
Nirgachanti
Sarupaha
Swarupaha
Agnisalakshana eva.
Agnisalakshana eva.
Full stop. So, Atyanta Parokshatvat, because of being extremely remote or inaccessible to the sense organ. Paroksha means suprasensuous. And Atyanta Paroksha means extremely inaccessible to the sense organs. Aksharam Brahma is extremely inaccessible to the sense organs, and therefore, Katham Nama Pratipadyeran. How will the students understand my teaching? This expression Katham Nama in the language is used to express wonder
Bandhva.
or, in English we can translate it as how indeed or how would it be possible. So how indeed pratyakshavat satyamaksharam pratipadyeran. Pratipadyeran means understand, know. So katham nama pratipadyeran means what or how will the students understand that satyamaksharam. Pratyakshavat, like understanding something which is available for sense organs. So here Bhashyakara is raising a rhetorical question. How can the Upanishad communicate that subtle Brahman to the students? Iti, with this concern, the Upanishad is using the example Drishtantam Aha. And what is the subject of Aha? Shruti Aha. Upanishad Aha. Shruti or Upanishad indeed gives an example. And what is the example? Bhashyakara says, Yatha Sudiptat, Sushtu Deeptat Iddhat. So Yatha means just as. So just as in this example, Sudiptas is adjective to Pavakat. Pavaka is another name for Agni. Sudipta means well kindled. And he is just explaining the derivation of the word Sudipta as Sushtu Deeptat Iddhat. So Su in Sudipta is equal to Sushtu. Sushtu means well. So Deeptat is equal to Iddhat. Iddhat means kindled. So Sudiptat means well kindled. Now what is well kindled? Pavakat. So Pavakat is there in the Moolam. He explains it as Agnehe. So Sudiptat Pavakat means the well kindled conflagration of fire. So when that kind of a fire is there, what happens? Vispulinga is in the Moolam, is equal to Agni Avayavaha. Agni Avayavaha means minute sparks of fire. Avayava means a part. And here, in the context of fire, it refers to the sparks. So how many sparks are there? The mantra says Sahasrashaha. And Bhashyakara is toning it down saying Anekashaha. Because Sahasra literally means 1,000. So Bhashyakara is indicating that even though the mantra says 1,000, we should not take the meaning literally. We can take it as Anekasha means innumerable, countless. Prabhavante is in the Moolam is equal to Nirgachanti. Nirgachanti means emanate, emerge, come out, originate. And what is the speciality to be noted here? They are Sarupaha. And this word Sarupaha is a crucial word. Because Sarupaha is adjective to Vispulinga, sparks. Now what is the meaning? Sarupaha means having the same nature. The sparks which have the same nature, samanam rupam, they emerge, come out. Come out of what? The Agni. And therefore Bhashyakara says, Agni salakshana eva. Having the nature which is the same as the original fire. Salakshanam means same nature. Then one may ask a very valid question. How do you say they have the same nature? Agni is one, sparks are many, Agni is big, sparks are, small, tiny one. So how do you say they are of the same nature? Many differences are there. So for that we say the plurality, shape, etc. are incidental nature. Incidental natures are different. That we are not questioning. Here Rupam means essential nature is the same. What is the essential nature? For Agni, Ushnam and Prakasham is the essential nature, heat and light. And for spark also, it is the same, Ushnam and Prakasham. And in that respect, they are same. So essentially, Agni and sparks are of the same nature. Similarly, between Jivatma and Paramatma, we do accept all the superficial differences. Paramatma, we say, is Sarvagnya, Jivatma is Alpagnya, Paramatma is Sarvashaktiman, Jivatma is Alpashaktiman or Ashaktiman. So these are superficial differences, we agree. We are not questioning them, and that is not important for Vedanta also. But the essential nature of Jivatma is what? Satchid Rupa hai. The essential nature of Paramatma also is Satchid Rupa hai. And therefore Sarupa hai eva. Bhashyakara adds eva for emphasis. So up to this is the example, Drishtanta. Now comes the Darshtanta, the principle behind the example, which is what the Shruti wants to convey through this example. So now Bhashyakara takes up the second line of the mantra and explains. Okay. Now we will read that part. I think it is a single sentence running into some 5-6 lines. Okay. Tata
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 Uktalakshanat
Uttalakshanat
Aksharat Vividaha
Aksharat
Vividaha
Nana Dehopadi
Nana
Dehopadi
Vedamano
Vedamano
Vidiyamanatvad
Vidiyamanatvat
Vividaha
Vividaha
He Somya Bhavaha
He Somyabhavaha
Jivaha
Jivaha
Akashat Iva
Akashativa
Ghatadi Parichinnaha
Ghatadi
Ghatadi Parichinnaha
Sushirabedaha
Sushiravedaha
Vedaha
Ghathadhi
Ghatadi
Upadhi Prapedam
Upadi
Upadi
Prapedam
Prapedam
Anubhavanti
Anubhavanti
Bhavanti
Evam
Evam
Vam
Nana Nama Rupa Krita
Nana
Nama
Rupakrita
Rupakrita
Dehopadhi
Dehopadi
Pade
Prabhavam Anu
Prabhavam Anu
Prajayante
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 Tatra Chaiva
Tatra
Tatra
Chaiva
Chaiva
Tasmin eva kshare
Tasmin evakshare
apiyanti
apiyanti
Yanti
dehopadhi
Dehopadi
vilayam anu
Vilayam
Vilayam
anu
Anu
liyante
Liyante
ghataadi vilayam anu
Gatadi Vilayam
Manu
Anu
iva sushira bhedah.
Iva Shushira
Iva Shushira
Beda
Vedaha.
A long sentence, as I said, running into almost 5.5 or 6 lines. Okay. So we will discuss part by part. Okay. So tatha. Tatha means in the same way. Aksharat is there in the Moolam. Bhashyakara explains as Ukta Lakshanat. Because the word Aksharam has got several meanings, including an alphabetical letter is also called Aksharam. And therefore, for extreme clarity, Bhashyakara says we have to take the contextual meaning. In the Mundaka Upanishad context, Aksharam has been already defined in the mantra 1.1.6, where Akshara has been defined as what? Etat adreshyam, agrahyam, agotram, avarnam, nirgunam, brahma, etc. So that definition we have to take here. So Ukta Lakshanam means which has already been described. So from such a Aksharam, what is born? Vividaha bhavaha. That is there in the Moolam. Later he says bhavaha means jivaha, jivatmanaha. So many jivatmas are born. And not only there are many jivatmas, Vividaha, having varied nature, various attributes, varied features, physically different, emotionally different, intellectually different, different kartrutvam, different bhoktrutvam, different jnatrutvam. So if we start looking at the differences, they are vividaha. Can go on counting the differences. So thus vividaha jivatmanah prajayante. And the moment the Upanishad uses the word vividaha, Bhashyakara realizes that there could be a problem. Whether we realize or not, Bhashyakara will immediately, sense. Because this adjective vividaha is qualifying what? It is qualifying Jivatma. And it is revealing the plurality of Jivatma. So once the plurality of Jivatma is accepted, then it will no more be Advaita Vedanta. It will become Sankhya or Yoga philosophy. Because all those systems of philosophy, they all accept that there are many Jivatmas. They accept Atma is one, but there are many Jivatmas. And in fact, all of them, they are all the Purva Pakshis for all these Bhashyams. They are waiting and looking for all this Upanishadic support. And now they will pick up this sentence because it is very favorable to them. Because the Upanishad itself is saying Vividaha Jivatmanaha. Many and varied Jivatmas. And once there is plurality, Advaitam will be negated. That is one problem. And there will be another problem also. If Jivatmas are numerous, plural, Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam also is not possible. Because Paramatma will be one and Jivatmas will be many. How can they be equal? which Jivatma will actually merge with which with the Paramatma, then all those will be a total confusion. And therefore, Bhashyakara carefully says, seemingly different many Jivatmas. And that word seemingly, he puts a note so that the Sankhya philosopher is kept outside. Therefore, he clarifies what Vividaha means in this context. He says, Nana Deha Upadi Bedam Anu Vidiyamanatvat Vividaha. Jivatmas are seemingly conditioned. Vidiyamanam means conditioned, shaped or formed, you can say. Anu means in keeping with. Keeping with what? Nana Deha Upadhi, many and varied conditioning factors. So here Upadhi means conditioning factors or enclosures or adjuncts. So every physical body is an enclosure, a container. Jivatma essential nature is Chaitanyam, which is contained in the Upadhi, the body, which is the container. So even though consciousness cannot be limited by, enclosed by, or circumscribed by the body, the consciousness is as though limited by the body. And not only it is as though limited, when the body is born, the consciousness is also as though born. When the body is gone, consciousness is also as though gone. When the body expands, consciousness is as though expands. And this is called seeming conditioning by the body. And because of that, there are many and unlimited Jivatmas. There seem to be many and unlimited Jivatmas. So the most important factor in this is the word seemingly. So what does it mean? Nana Deha Upadhi Bedam Manu. Because of the plurality and variety of beings which belongs to the body, plurality and variety does not belong to consciousness. The plurality and variety of the body is apparently transferred to the consciousness, is superimposed on the consciousness, like the redness of the flower is transferred to the crystal when the red flower is kept near the crystal, isn't it? We have seen this example long ago or in some other context also. So the very word upadhi means that which apparently transfers its attributes to something else. The word upadhi is defined as upasamipe stitva shriyan dharman anyatra adhatte iti upadhihi. Upasamipe means staying nearby. Shriyan dharma means swadharma, its attributes. Anyatra, upon another thing. Close by, adhatte, seemingly transfers. And in the above example I gave, the red flower is the upadhi. The colorless crystal is the upahitam. Now, what does the upadhi do? When the red flower is kept very close to the colorless crystal, the redness of the flower is transferred to the crystal and the crystal appears red. And here the most important thing to be noted is the transference is not actual transference. It is only a seeming transference and apparent transference. So the upadhi, when said, it means it has falsely transferred. And that's why Bhashyakara uses Nana Deha Upadhi Bhedam. Here the word Bhedam does not mean difference. Here the word Bheda means particular body. So Bheda means Visheshaha. Visheshaha means a particular. And what do we mean by particular? Because each body has got its own particular nature, each mind has got its own particular nature. And these particularities or individualities are apparently transferred to consciousness, to the Jivatma, to the reflected consciousness. And therefore, Nana Dehu Upadhi Bhedam Anu Vidiyamanatvat means in keeping with the conditioning factors of the various bodies, consciousness is also seemingly conditioned. It becomes an individualized ego. It becomes an individualized principle. And therefore, using plural for Jivatma is justified. And therefore, the word Vividaha we have to understand as because of the plurality of the nature of the Upadhis. There is seeming plurality of the Jivatma. Then he says, He Somya Bhava hai, Jiva hai, Akashat iva, Gathadi Parichinna hai, Sushira Bheda hai, Gathadyupadhi Prabhedam Anu Bhavanti. Evam Nana Nama Rupa Krita Dehopadhi Prabhavam Anu Prajayante. Tatra Chaiva Yasmin Evakshare Apiyanti. Dehopadhi Vilayamanu Liyante Gatadi Vilayamanu Iva Sushira Bedaha. So here, it's a long sentence, of course. And here Bhashyakara is giving a different example from the example given in the Upanishad. And also the Drishtanta. Drishtanta and Drashtanta both he states. Because Bhashyakara does not seem to be happy with fire and spark example for a very good reason. And which reason will be revealed at the end of the Bhashya. And therefore, he is jumping from the spark example to the space example. So I will first give you the essence of this sentence, so that it will be relatively easy to understand. In the Shruti, this fire and spark example is given. So it says, just as the sparks are born of fire, similarly, jivas are born of Akshara Brahman. But in this spark fire example, if it is not understood properly, excuse me. So if the spark fire example is not understood properly, it can create some misunderstanding. Because when the fire is burning, the sparks come out and go away from the fire. So there is a spatial distance between the fire and sparks. And based on this example, what will be the misunderstanding? Many people the mistake will be that many people will think we are all sparks of divine. We are sparks coming from divine God. And we have been separated from the Lord. So like God is the Karanam and we are all Karyam. Here fire is the Karanam and the sparks are Karyam. So we are an Amsham of God, a part of God. You see where it is leading to? So this example could give rise to the understanding of Amsha Amshi Bhava, which is the bedrock of Visishta Advaita. Because the Advaitins, Visishta Advaitins, their philosophy is that only. They say you cannot equate Jivatma and Paramatma. Jivatma is a part of Paramatma, and moksha means that Jivatma has to travel and become one with Paramatma. That is their philosophy. Amsha Amshi Bhava. Jivatma is a Amsha, Paramatma is the Amshi. And if this is the understanding, the Advaita Siddhanta will be in trouble. It would mean Paramatma and Jivatma were in different places and have now come together to merge. Even though this is not the intention of the Upanishad, because this is only one sentence. So many other places, we have to study the Upanishad as a whole. We have to understand the message, what message Upanishad wants to convey as a whole. And that is why the Upanishad is talking about Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam, because essentially there is no difference between Jivatma and Paramatma, and the Aikyam is possible. But this interpretation could lead to a problem of a spatial distance between Jivatma and Paramatma. There is a likelihood of such a misunderstanding. And therefore, Bhashyakara goes to a better example. And that example also is given by Shastra only. Bhashyakara is not inventing his own example. But that example is not in this Upanishad, but elsewhere. And Bhashyakara quotes that example of total space and pot space. Mahakasha, total space, and Ghatakasha, pot space, or you can even say room space. So he starts with the word Somya, which is there in the Moolam. He clarifies that this is Sambodhana, that the Acharya is addressing the Sishya. And therefore he adds He to that. He Somya, he says. And there is another purpose for saying He Somya. He is alerting the student. He says, may you please attention to what I am going to say. Don't sleep here. You can sleep later. You have come to the class and here you have to alertly listen. So, He Somya. Because sometimes what happens is, you are sitting in a class and you are just dozing, That's for so many reasons. Many students, either it is boring or they had a very sleepless night or whatever it is, early morning class, they are dozing. And suppose the Acharya say, well, he is hearing something. It's not that totally gone off to sleep, just dozing. And suppose the Acharya says, hey, Ganapathy, immediately, there will be a jolt. He will wake up, he will become alert. Oh, Acharya has called my name. So that way he says, hey, Saumya, don't sleep here. Don't doze off. Listen to what I am going to say. Then he gives the meaning of the word bhava hai as jiva hai or jivatmana hai. The word bhava hai generally refers to both chetana and achetana padartha. But here, Bhashyakara is highlighting only the Chetana Jivatma. Because the essence of Vedanta teaching is oneness of Jivatma and Paramatma. Achetana Padartha is not relevant for these discussions. And therefore, if somebody asks a tricky question, if Jivatma is born out of Paramatma or is Jivatma identical with Paramatma? Question is Jivatma born out of Paramatma or is Jivatma identical with Paramatma? If somebody asks that question, you should not answer that question straight away. You should ask the person, from what standpoint are you asking this question? If it is from the standpoint of the body, Jivatma is said to be born out of Paramatma. Vachyartha drishtya karyakarana sambandha asti. Vyavaharika drishtya Jivatma is said to be born out of Paramatma. Tatastha lakshana drishtya Jivatma is said to be born out of Paramatma. And if you negate the body by Bhagatyaga Lakshana, remember we have discussed Bhagatyaga Lakshana earlier. You negate the body from the standpoint of Chaitanyam, then Jivatma is not Karyam, but Jivatma is identical. So Paramarthika Drishtya, Nirupadika Drishtya, Aikya Sambandha eva asti. So indirectly Mahavakyam comes in this sentence. Okay. Then he goes to the example and says, Akashat iva ghatadi parichinnaha sushira vedaha. Akashat iva means like the total space. Ghatadi parichinnaha means conditioned by the pot, etc. That means from one lump of clay, various types of pottery are created. So when we say a clay pot or a clay cup or a clay plate, etc., what it means that it is one clay which has given various names and forms. And if you cognitively remove the names and forms, what will be left will be only clay. Similarly, from the total space, Sushira Bheda hai. Sushira here means rooms. Various rooms and halls are created. And what is the meaning of the word room? Normally, if we are asked to describe or define a room, what will be our definition? Yeah, these are all very subtle things which we don't think about at all. What we will say, please define a room. We will say a room is a space enclosed by 4 walls and a ceiling. But factually, a room is not the 4 walls or ceiling. A room refers to the space enclosed within the walls and ceiling. Walls and ceiling are upadhi. That space which is there within the 4 walls and ceiling is called a room. That is why if we want to enter a crowded place, what is the question we ask? Is there a room for one more person? For example, you are entering a lift and lift is already crowded. But you feel you can just get in, you're in a hurry. So what will the question you will ask? Is there a room for one more person? That means what? Is there a space for one more person to be accommodated? Therefore, room is the name of what? Space or enclosed space. But then in the normal parlance, what do we say? The builder built a room. If correctly translated, It would mean the builder built a space in the room, which is an atrocious idea. The builder has only built the walls and ceiling, which are not the room. Room means space within those structures. So what happened here? The utpatti of the wall and ceiling are transferred to the unbound space. Space was there before and space is there now also. But we say the room has been built, ashram has been built, kitchen has been built, hall has been built. And they are all what? Sushira Beda have. Varieties of enclosed spaces. We'll continue in the next class. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Dhanyavadaha. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very
ಧನ್ಯವಾದ
much,
ಗುರುಜಿ.
Namaskaram.
Thank you, Guruji. Thank you.
Thank you.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದ ಗುರುಜಿ.
Dhanyavadaha.
Thank you, Guruji. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. Any questions? No hands are going up.
I think last class, Gita class, I think Girish ji mentioned that both Gita and Upanishads are coming more or less. They're talking about that 11th chapter of Vishwarupam and this today of the space. I think it is merging very well.
Yeah. Parallelly, it is going. It's a teaching. Using different text, different words, different examples, etc.
Very, very nice, very nice.
Ultimately, Gita is also what? Upanishad Saram only, That is.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Hari Om. Thank you. Thank you all.
Here, Gadakasha and Mahakasha example was given. It could have been given directly clay and pot also.
Given directly?
Clay and pot.
Clay and pot.
Yeah, that's true. Clay and pot also could have been given. Bhashyakara feels Gata Kasha, Mahakasha is there. So all are all examples. We can understand it. So many golden ornaments we can take.
Wave and water.
Water and bubble example, or waves and water. So many examples are there, isn't it? So you can't be, if he goes on quoting all examples, Bhashya will never finish. So he just picks up Gatakasha and Mahakasha, that's all.
I mean, if we are able to now view the reality, at least.
That's
the
the
best part.
That's the best part. What is the reality? Because most of the time our problem is misunderstanding.
Correct.
And that is because of the orientation. For example, as I said towards the end, I want you to build a house. You tell a builder. What do you mean by that? Suppose he builds a house, he builds 4 walls and all touching each other and one ceiling. That also he will say, this is a house. Will you accept it? So you will say, no, I want a 20 by 15 hall. What does the 20 by 15 indicate?
Space.
It indicates the space. You say, I want 300 square feet of ground and I want the ceiling to be 12 feet high. So 12 into 15 into 20 cubic feet of space is what I want. This is what we want to convey to him. But our expression is what we want a hall.
Correct.
So in many ways, whenever we use words without thinking what we are actually saying. And all that Vedanta is doing is only trying to put it correct language, correct understanding, dispelling all those misconceptions and Because normally nobody will bother about all these things, isn't it?
Yeah, we are left with only the transactional reality,
Exactly. That is it. Well, what is the reality of the world? We still do not know. We are thinking that what we are seeing is real. Just like, small children, they go to magic show. They will think that all that the magician is showing is real. The adults who are sitting there may not know how he is doing all those things, but they know they are not real. Cutting a body and removing the head and all that, they know it is not real. Otherwise, there will be a whole place will be surrounded by police if really he cuts a body. But children, they won't understand. They will think, oh my God, he is doing all these things. He is producing a rabbit out of a hat. Everything they will think, So like that, we are all like the children only, looking at the world and thinking, what is the reality of this entire world? Upanishad teaches us this is the reality. So that is what it is. If you have got tuned to it, then it is very interesting. Upanishad after Upanishad, learning is very, very interesting and very, very absorbing rather.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hari Om Guruji. Thank you.
Thank you. Hari Om, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji.
See you next class.